it is fair to say that... So there's times where I describe it as like this. The content's good. The marketing for the content is good. You know? It's getting a good click-through rate and all those things. But the impressions aren't there. As in, there's just not enough people on YouTube interested in Warcraft for the content to do as well as it did in the past. Even though we might get a good click-through rate and, you know, good watch time and people like the video. And that just kind of, to me, is reflecting a lack of an ability to... I guess the cultural weakness of Dragonflight, because it's been fairly... You know, it's been, like, as a game, really good, you know, in all these ways. But, you know, it hasn't just been that, like, big, grand, kind of very fundamental, archetypical adventure that people have got hyped for in the way that Matt just talked about Death Knights.
Too smart, too clever, trying too hard. I think that's ultimately the weird thing. Literally, you just need to, like... No, well, I can't say that. I can't say that. I would never
find out what that is after stream.
Yeah, I would never recommend doing something like that. But they should just be in a room and be dumb. Just be like, what's the dumbest shit that comes to your mind? What do you think is cool? Not what you think is good. Not what you think is interesting. Stop thinking. Just be like, cool thing. Like, what do you see that actually elevates your heart rate? What do you see and go, oh my God, I'm so glad to be alive? What makes you feel like that? And if the answer is nothing, then you probably be like,
Amberthal is emotionally intelligent.
Yeah. That's
the hell dropped onto the floor.
I don't know.
Oh. Final Fantasy Man.
Final Fantasy Man. Fantastic. Yes. Yeah, that's the thing, Akaria. They don't seem to understand cool largely, but they would. They would. They can.
Matson does.
Yeah, they can and will. You can figure it out.
Matson does. That's the thing. Has Matson ever been the best at anything? I think no. And I don't mean that as a criticism.
Full on yoinked everything. Not a single thing in any of his work is original at all.
But the bit that he's got is he remixes it all into something that's cool. And I think the key insight that has allowed Matson involved creations to do very well is through whatever the process is, it ends up with something that is easy to understand, larger than life, and exciting. That is what has been present through all Blizzard games whenever they've blown up good. All right, that's what, like Overwatch 2016. Bam! You know, Overwatch got big for the same reasons that WoW got big. Very different products, obviously, but all those kind of like core archetypical things that it hit on that people just fundamentally like are tickled by. Yeah, it's like Dragonflight's moved away from that because it's kind of got bogged down in all these details and things where it's like, hey, those details would be really good, but we've got to get the big picture right first. And it's the big picture that is still, I don't want to say it's, like in the past it was wrong. Now it's merely just not quite right.
Yeah.
To be clear, like there's a lot of improvement. But we have not had epic moments that would remind one of Legion or the highlights of Mists of Pandaria or the highlights of Wrath of the Lich King. We haven't had moments like that in the game, in Dragonflight. And I think those are the moments that really, you know, the community rallied around.
Just go and watch all of the cool bits of Warcraft 3 again and do those.
Even like think of the Worlds of Draenor little cutscenes that happened in the quests.
They were like this is something
they all went pretty hard and they were pretty hype.
I was literally thinking about like maybe doing like a podcast or a bit of members content that is literally just Worlds of Draenor might have been one of the best expansions ever made. Sorry, it might be one of the best expansions ever made purely on the questing content because that shit was so.
It's so sad. If only WoD could have had follow through. Man, it's the most like tragic thing about it. But you think about like the Gunnar, like the Frostfire Ridge cutscene, the whole Darkstar one. I was like, that was some goofy, cheesy shit, but it was cool.
Yeah, it was slightly too goofy, I think, but like the Darkstar stuff where Valen just walks into it and fixes the problem. You're like, what? Okay, cool. Maybe you could explain that a bit better, or maybe instead of him walking into it, he did a beam battle with it.
Oh, not a beam battle.
Oh, beam battles.
Come on, you cannot find yourself on the side of the beam battle.
I have always been the side of beam battles, always have been, always will be.
Do you want to
as long as they're good, not like fucking Harry Potter, where they were pointless. But any time when there's been battles that makes sense. And it makes sense in Warcraft all the time.
So do you want a beam battle set against the backdrop of a large beam going into the sky?
No, I don't want that at all.
Peak modern content.
Sky beams are awful.
Sky beams are okay.
To much like our sky beams.
So you're okay for a horizontal beam, but a vertical beam, you don't fuck with that shit.
Unless the vertical beam is against someone who's pushing one down. Yeah.
Okay, fair.
Yeah,
fair.
That's cool.
Good. I'm glad we got the details worked out.
And also, beam battles are not just beam battles. Who's got the beam that wins? It's about watching it as the representation of the fight in a way that's really easy to follow. Because the beam battle's not just who wins the beam battle. Beam battles, it's actually you want someone to win, and you watch them as they win. You watch them as they don't. It's basically a fucking progress bar, and you want to see it fill up the way you want it to fill up. So when it doesn't fill up the way you want it to fill up, you feel that, and you see it, and it's like representative of everything that happens. And that's just like that's the kind of stuff that's really simple and really easy to understand. And because it's simple and easy to understand, you like it a lot. And I'm fairly pretentious. I actually like things that are complicated, but I definitely still like things that are just cool. Like I had a fucking moment today when I was watching, because I'd finished chapter 3 and did some chapter 4 of Armored Core 6, and I was going through. Lance McDonald had tweeted about the evolution of sound design from FromSoft, where there's a bit in Elden Ring where I can't remember the boss name, but it does a lightning strike. And since they changed from Fmod to WIs, they've had better like event stuff for their audio. And it was just this boss does lightning strike, the music pauses, you hear it reverbs. There's a bit in Armored Core 6 against the Iceworm, the chapter 3 boss, where it's you and a load of dudes. You have to disable its shield while this thing called the ORC, the overt rail cannon, so big rail gun, charges and has to hit this thing. So you get every bit of perfect sound design you've ever heard, right?
Yeah.
And it's just the music starts to dim. This giant mechanical ice worm blasts out of the ice, out of the snow. You hear someone just like counting up, and it's Rusty, who's a cool ass dude. And he's just counting up. He's like 85, 90, 95. The music pauses as soon as this thing bursts up. And the shot reverberates across like this snowy tundra, and everything's paused, and you're just like, I felt that in my core. I felt that. And then obviously the final shot against the Iceworm, he overcharges it, so he's counting 85, 90, 95, 100, 105, 110. He says 115. The communication starts to crackle from all the energy. So the comms start to go, and this massive shot with like the delay, the shot goes through, and then the worm explodes a couple seconds later. And it's like, it's all just sound design. It's all just shot a big beam through a thing. But it was the pacing of it. It was the way it was set up, the way you had your part to play in the fight. And that's the thing where like, if you had a raid boss, or maybe even like a scenario boss or something, and it was some really big, horrible evil, like the worst villain, say it's almost an extension of the Chromie and Iridicron stuff, where it was Chromie kind of did everything and you were just sort of taking away Iridicron, you defended her and stuff like that and killed dads. But a version that's like that, but you've got, I'm trying to think, say Khadgar, and if they can do it right, instead of cutting to a cutscene, if they can do it right where Khadgar is like screaming as he's getting closer to finishing his spell, maybe there's a network of spellcasters trying to finish the spell, maybe you've got like half the Council of Kirin Tor in this circle that you're defending, trying to bring down the equivalent of a magic nuke onto some horrible void creature that's appeared out of a portal in the sky, and you're just defending them while that happens, and you have this mad dash to do it, and you get the equivalent of like the Legion stuff where the Vindicar was like blasting giant beams. Just that, but you've defended this circle of mages while they're casting this like world-ending spell that they need to cast. Just stuff like that with the right sound design, the right things like that. Teasing the trailer. That's the stuff that World of Warcraft needs. People go, this is good. I feel something again. Which is fundamentally it. Are you saying the cinematics need for this role? Dragon Soul's a perfect example. Because the Dragon Soul was technically what they were doing, and it was sucked in execution. Largely. Because it was like you're defending the aspects where they're charging stuff.
Oh, God.
But it was a really boring fight. And it just wasn't executed well at all. And you're like, oh, Green Jesus shoots him down, sweet. But if you like, there's a good version of that where it feels super tense right at the last second. It's voice acted really well.
Yeah.
You're doing crazy stuff. The example of that is so good. So good. Do I trust them to do it right? I don't know. But am I sitting here going, man, the things I would tell them to do if I were in charge?
Well, I'm glad that, like, you know, it's what we talked about last time. Metzen's back. Apparently he's back in a larger way than people thought. And to me, all that seems good. It seems that what WoW was missing was strong creative direction. I think it had... So here's the thing, right? I think it had people who... This is the criticism I would put on WoW in what I would call the caretaker era, which is where people... And it's challenging. Because the people who run WoW didn't create it, right? Ian joined in like 2007 or whatever. He's now game director and, you know, stuff like that. There wasn't as much Genesis. They're custodians, you know, caretakers, maintainers, etc. And there's been like plenty of building and expanding, you know, sure. But like you look at the lore especially. The lore has been made by people who want to make Wowpedia pages with lots of stuff. But the thing is, the community does that. And the community would, you know, follow in the trails of whatever fucking lunatic shit Metzen was doing. But I think the point was they were taking these really big swings and filling in lots of the map and lots of lore and lots of stuff was happening. But it was always kind of like driven by these like just very big, simple things. Whereas now with the lore, it just feels... Oh, it's hard. Man, it's just really challenging to actually find the words. I mean, I know you know what I mean.
Yeah, I think that's the challenging part is it's easy to know what you mean. It's hard to actually describe it and say it in a way that makes sense. As opposed to just do it right. It's time. Just do it properly.
It's like there's too much getting caught up in details and stuff.
It's exactly that. It is literally, it is trying to stick to the letter instead of... Well, it's weird.
I certainly haven't done that with the lore.
Yeah. I don't know. It's kind of awkward. Because it is just clearly just different tastes manifesting.
Yeah.
Which is like the
it's like coming in
part.
with different tastes or a different interpretation of the original medium and then, I guess, running into creative struggles.
Yeah.
From that point onward. And World of Warcraft has, since Legion, had creative struggles. I mean, no, it's had creative struggles for a long time. Anyone could look at the lore of TBC and think like,
oh, it's all a permanently retcon nightmare.
Oh yeah.
Like every time you see them, you're like, that was just made up. That was made up. That was made up at the time. They didn't think of this. None of this was thought about. And now the problem is that it's being thought about more, and that's not manifesting correctly.
Yeah.
For a variety of reasons, including production time and stuff like that. So it's like it's given up one of World of Warcraft's biggest strengths to try and shore up one of its weaknesses. But in the creative realm, a lot of the time what you want to do is have one strength and it be your turbo strength and go, this needs to be the biggest strength of all time. Because if you lose that, you like don't have the ability to fight in that arena. It's like as soon as you start taking points out of strength and put them in the decks, then you're no longer wielding 2 dragon teeth and you're pointless. So I just completely I just defaulted to Dark Souls there, sorry.
Okay, I didn't know what the dragon teeth were.
Oh yeah, just
okay.
Havel's weapon, the dragon tooth. You do wield dragon teeth on a strength build, it's game over. As long as you land it, but yes.
So there we have it. Next week will be interesting because there'll be a lot more concrete stuff to talk about. We'll be able to know like what the fate of all these different factions like the Night Elves and stuff are. So that'll be cool.